Welcome to Story Spark, your ultimate destination for enchanting tales, fables, and life lessons. Dive into captivating stories for adults and others that teach important morals and inspire positive thinking. From classic animal fables to inspiring life lessons, our animated and narrated stories make learning fun and memorable. Subscribe for new moral stories every week and spark your imagination with every tale.
One sweltering summer's day, under a blazing sun, a clever fox named Finley roamed through the countryside, his tongue parched and his stomach rumbling. He had been searching for food and water for hours, his usual hunting grounds proving unfruitful. His paws ached, and his red fur felt heavy with the heat. "Oh, for a sweet, juicy treat!" he muttered to himself, his keen nose twitching hopefully. He scanned the horizon, his amber eyes darting from side to side, desperate for any sign of refreshment. Just as despair began to set in, a glimmer of purple caught his eye, high up amongst the vibrant green leaves of a vineyard. Finley's heart leaped with joy. There, hanging in succulent bunches from a tall vine, were the most magnificent grapes he had ever seen. They were plump, ripe, and shimmered invitingly in the sunlight, promising a burst of cool, sweet juice. His mouth began to water uncontrollably at the thought of quenching his thirst and satisfying his hunger with such a delicious feast. He imagined the rich, sugary taste bursting on his tongue. Forgetting his fatigue, Finley bounded towards the vineyard, his spirits instantly lifted. This was exactly what he needed, a perfect reprieve from the relentless heat and his gnawing hunger. Reaching the foot of the vine, Finley jumped with all his might, eager to snatch a bunch of the tantalizing grapes. His paws stretched, his body arched, but alas, the grapes remained just out of reach. He landed with a soft thud, his paws stirring up a small cloud of dust. Undeterred, he tried again, leaping higher this time, straining every muscle in his agile body. Still, the luscious fruit eluded his grasp. His frustration began to mount. The grapes, so close yet so far, seemed to mock him with their tantalizing proximity and vibrant, unblemished perfection. Finley tried every trick he knew. He took a running start, launching himself upwards with renewed vigor, twisting his body in midair, hoping to snag a vine with his claws. He even tried to climb the smooth, slippery trunk of the vine, but his paws couldn't find purchase, sliding him back down to the ground. He jumped from different angles, convinced that a slight change in approach would finally bring success. Each attempt was met with the same disappointing result. The grapes swung gently in the breeze, utterly untouchable. His energy began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of irritation and helplessness. After what felt like an eternity of futile leaping, Finley grew tired. His muscles ached, his breathing was heavy, and his initial enthusiasm had completely evaporated. The bright sun, which had once seemed so promising, now felt oppressive, beating down on his weary form. He slumped to the ground, panting, gazing up at the unreachable grapes with a mixture of longing and exasperation. He had exerted so much effort, expended so much energy, all for nothing. The sweet salvation he had envisioned now seemed like a cruel mirage, a cruel joke played by the universe. As Finley sat there, defeated and utterly exhausted, a bitter thought began to form in his mind. "Those grapes," he scoffed aloud, his voice rough with disappointment, "they're probably sour anyway. Look at them. They're probably not even ripe. They're certainly not as good as they look." He tried to convince himself that they were not worth his trouble, that he hadn't truly wanted them after all. This sudden change in perspective was his way of coping with his failure, a defense mechanism against the sting of his inability to achieve his goal. With the dismissive flick of his tail, Finley pushed himself to his feet. He cast one last disdainful glance at the beautiful, untouched bunches. "No, definitely sour," he muttered, shaking his head. "Only a foolish fox would waste time on such unappetizing fruit." He turned his back on the vineyard, walking away with an air of feigned indifference, determined to uphold his pride despite his empty stomach and parched throat. He might not have gotten what he wanted, but he certainly wouldn't admit that he couldn't have it. His wounded ego demanded a more convenient truth. As Finley trotted away, still thirsty and hungry, he sought comfort in his revised assessment of the grapes. It was easier to believe they were sour than to accept his own limitations. And so the fox continued his journey, carrying a lesson, though perhaps not the one he intended to learn. He had discovered that if you cannot obtain something, it is often easier to disparage it than to acknowledge your own failure. He never looked back at the vineyard, convinced he had made the right decision, albeit a self-serving one. And so, the tale of the fox and the grapes teaches us a valuable lesson. It's often easier to pretend we didn't want something when we can't have it, or to declare it sour. Remember to be honest with yourself about your desires and efforts. Thank you for joining us for this story.